Yeah, this one is kind of your chalk 1-4 matchup. I think Peyton Hill is not only fits the description as far as a one hit wonder goes, but he also fits the description of the Madden curse at the same time. So I think that's a slam dunk. So Peyton Hillis goes on to the regional final.
Yeah.
All right, next matchup in the region: seed versus 3 seed. We have the number 2 seed, Robert Griffin III, 2012 Washington. I call them the Command Skins here, just because I hate Commanders, and I just wanted to throw in the old name because that's how we all know them by.
Sure.
3,200 passing yards, 20 TDs, 815 rushing yards, 7 TDs, averaged 23.82 points per game. So as we go through, whenever we do points per game, we're doing this as a PPR league because
PPR.
that's the majority of leagues that are
Yeah.
out there. So when we say points, it's in PPR leagues. So just so people know, couple of tidbits on Robert Griffin III. Highest point total of this specific year was Week 11 against the Eagles. He had 200 passing yards with 4 TDs, 12 rushes for 84 yards. Command Skins won 31-6. And this year also, uh, Washington made the playoffs, right? So they were just like awful franchise. They draft him, I think, second overall, and rookie year comes in. Also, tidbit, Kirk Cousins was his backup, right?
Yep.
So and I think Cousins was a fourth or fifth round draft pick.
Same draft.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, same draft. So just a little tidbit there. Against the number 3 seed, Josh Gordon, 2013 Cleveland Browns. He had 87 catches for 1,646 yards, averaged 15.13 fantasy points per game. Now, I know you see it, right, because you have the sheet in front of you. But for the people at home, I'm going to ask a question. It's going to be rhetorical because obviously nobody else can answer here. But I'm going to give you 5 seconds to think of the quarterbacks that were throwing the ball to Josh Gordon during this year. All right, everybody have their answers. The 3 quarterbacks that threw the ball to Josh Gordon during this year were Jason Campbell for 8 games, Brandon Whedon for 5 games, and Brian Hoyer for three
Yeah.
games. So the fact that Josh Gordon had these stats with these quarterbacks is just insane. Um, and weeks 11 through 15 for Josh Gordon. So he didn't, I don't think he played the first game of the year, or maybe he like had limited time. But basically, this was at end of the year. Josh Gordon was the guy to swing a lot of fantasy leagues because of his performance later on in the year. So weeks 11 through 15, week 11 at Cleveland, 5 catches for 125 and a tud. Week 16 versus Pittsburgh, 14 catches for 237 yards and a tud. Um, week 13 uh, versus Jacksonville, 10 catches for 261 yards and 2 tuds. And the following week at New England, 7 catches for 151 and 1 touchdown. All right. So I'll kick off the thing. I'll kick off as far as who I think the winner is. Um, I think this kind of has to go to Josh Gordon because of just probably because of the the ability of him to single-handedly swing the fantasy leagues, because he had a slow start to the season, really kind of came out of nowhere, but especially towards the end of the year where the Browns were out of it, he still put up the production to swing a lot of fantasy leagues that are out there. And this just kind of goes to show you at the end of the day how dumb fantasy football is, because it's not the top tier guys that are going to swing fantasy leagues. Like maybe Lamar Jackson during his MVP year, or maybe Mahomes when he went for 50 tuds. I think it was 2018 or 2019. Maybe those top tier guys can swing a fantasy league to make you if you're lucky enough to have one of these guys, win. But for the most part, it's going to be those bottom of the barrel guys that catch fire at the end of the year that are really going to swing the fantasy leagues that are out there. So it's not about, and just for everybody who's drafting, the guys in the top 30, let's say, they're going to be relatively close as far as production goes. But it's really going to be rounds 4 through the end of the draft where you're going to win your fantasy leagues. That's what it all comes down to. So the fact that Josh Gordon put up the production that he did, and how he caught fire in some of those games, like the one at Pittsburgh, 14 catches for 237 and a touchdown, and then 10 for 261 and 2 tuds against Jacksonville. Those are monster numbers, and those are like 30 plus point fantasy games. So the fact that you can get those types of numbers towards the end of the year when everybody's starting to get injured and everybody's starting to get nicked up, and you have some teams who are potentially resting guys for a long potential playoff run, the fact that you have a guy like that who is putting up the production that he did, to me, it's Josh Gordon, 100%. Robert Griffin III, yes, he came out of nowhere, his rookie year, running, passing, but I don't really think he had the overall impact on the fantasy leagues that Josh Gordon did. So my pick is Josh Gordon. I don't think it's close. But yeah, Mark, let me see what you have to say. All right, so we had a little bit of technical difficulties there. Shark got kicked off. He's in a different room, different wallpaper, more of a clean lit room. So just let me recap kind of what I said, because I think it's Josh Gordon here, and the reason why I think that is because he single-handedly swung fantasy leagues by those numbers. I mean, you look at those games against Pittsburgh and Jacksonville. Against Pittsburgh, 14 catches for 237 and a tud, and against Jacksonville, 10 catches for 261 and 2 tuds. The fact that you can have a guy like that on your fantasy team towards the end of the year when everybody's necked up, when there's injuries, when teams are potentially resting guys for a long, potential playoff run, and you have like a guaranteed 20 to 30 point guy towards the end of the year, especially if that's during your playoffs, that's a slam dunk pick for me. I mean, Robert Griffin III, yes, he had an impact, but I don't think he swung leagues as much as Josh Gordon.
No, so I like RG3 just because when I think of RG3, he was a multi-dimensional quarterback, right? I think he was actually the next wave of being a versatile quarterback where you can run with the ball and throw with the ball. Obviously Mike Vick being the first one I think of our time, at least watching. Obviously Randall Cunningham in the past and Warren Moon. But when you think of RG3 and his multi-dynamic type of mindset, if it wasn't for his rib injury, I know a lot of people talk about the ACL, and obviously that's a huge factor. But I think also the ribs made him one-dimensional very, very quickly. In regards to throwing the ball in the pocket, right? And he was lights out at Baylor, right? He was a really good quarterback, obviously. Being picked at a high clip, in the draft. But when I think of RG3, I think of the most memories of him rolling outside the pocket, finding ways to make it happen on his feet, more so than Josh Gordon, because Josh Gordon still, even though with Josh Gordon, it was more about him smoking marijuana that kept him out of the league, right? It wasn't the inability to play the position. It was more so just the incompetence off the field when you have rules and regulations that you can't abide to. So, and I think with RG3, he had fantasy on fantasy on fantasy numbers that just couldn't be stopped. And he was making defenses think twice about, what was happening with his tight ends and wide receivers and, utilizing his running backs, and he made the most of it. But he just didn't last long. And that's the sad part with RG3 is because he's more than capable of being a franchise quarterback. and leading his team down the field, and whether that's clutch times or, leading good drives down the field. But when I think of Josh Gordon too, I think of a receiver that could just do it all, right? Whether that's, on wide receiver screens, down the middle of the field, post routes, getting open with ease. He was a dominant player. But it's funny because, like, you think of Josh Gordon, you think of, like, how good he really was, Giff. Like, he was insanely nasty.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't stay on the field because he couldn't abide to the regulations. So with that being said, I think we should disqualify Josh Gordon. And
oh, boo! Come on. We're talking, but the argument is individual fantasy performances, though, not if he's an idiot and can't stay on the field. Now, to your point about RG3, Josh Gordon did have another 1,000-yard receiving season with the Pats. So the fact of kind of the one-hit wonder, I can see how maybe RG3 would be a little bit more one-hit wonder-ish as far as fantasy numbers are concerned, because Josh Gordon did perform later on in his career when he hooked up with Tom Brady before he got busted for weed again, which, again, let me just get on a quick diatribe. Is the dumbest rule of all time.
It is.
Like, but when you know that it's illegal and you still do it, and if you have a problem trying to get it fixed because this is your income stream and you get popped for it like five times. Yes, I know the rule is silly, and the fact that they outlawed it finally, thank God. But I will kind of give you more of the one-hit wonder-ish with RG3 than Josh Gordon, because he did have another 1,000-yard, receiving season. So I'll give you RG3 on that one. Yeah, that's fine. As we dig a little bit deeper.
If I may also talk a little bit about why teams should not always emphasize first-round picks, right? Because I said this multiple times on podcasts before. You have to build through the trenches, right? You get your quarterback late in the rounds. It's just a given fact. Look at Aaron Rodgers. Look at Kirk Cousins. Look at Dak Prescott. Look at Russell Wilson. Like, all these quarterbacks, where are they getting picked? 4th, 3rd, 5th round, 6th round. Brock Purdy, 7th round. Tom Brady, 7th round. I mean, come on. We're thinking a lot of these organizations, and you're seeing it now, there's actually a lot more success rate within the 2020s versus, prior. But it was not good, during that time frame where you're taking a whole shot on a guy that has proven to be, a very durable quarterback in college, but couldn't last in the NFL because, one, you didn't have an offensive line to protect him. 2, you didn't teach him right to go down or to slide or run out of bounds instead of trying to fight for extra yardage. Nowadays, I think quarterbacks acknowledge the fact that they could get injured, whether that's concussions, whether that's torn ACLs, whether that's hitting the rib cage. Tony Romo, for example, got hit in the ribs running outside the pocket. It's just one of those things where you just need to control yourself. And if you can control yourself, then you are a good pick. In this case, RG3 was not the right selection according to Washington and their mindset on building a roster. They didn't have the roster at hand. And that's why if I am any team right now starting a rookie quarterback, find a way to protect them, find a way to get good coaching, find a way to get average or above average weapons around them, and have a top 5 to top 10 defense.
All right, Shock Sports Radio listeners, listen up. Football season is upon us, but hang on. There's something missing. When you're watching games on Thursday, Sunday, and Monday, eating good football snacks and having a couple of brews, what's missing? Oh, that's right, Underdog Fantasy. You don't want to miss out on all the latest and greatest opportunities to make the most of your earnings. First off, the Travis Kelce new customer free pick is currently live, which is set at 0.5 yards. This free pick is now available to all customers, new and existing. Also, deposit offer is up to $1,000. Yes, $1,000. And win up to 1,000 times your money. So let's get on it. Download the app and use the promo code SharkSports.